Everybody serves a God, whether that be yourself, the God of heaven, money, women, or multiple gods. Everybody has something they idolize, prioritize, and authorize power to. So what has power over you? Our protagonist, a sophisticated, eloquent man, falls down a rabbit hole of infatuation with Dolores Hayes. He nicknames her Lolita. This obsession is not just a fixation though, it borders on a form of worship. For Humbert, Lolita is the object of his deepest, darkest desires, and he places her at the pinnacle. She becomes his everything, idealizing her to the point of seeing her as a deity. Upon its release, the novel Lolita, written by Vladimir Nabokov, was met with a mixture of shock, outrage, and fascination. The book was initially rejected by several American publishers due to its explicit content and the tabooness, the disgustingness of it all. But what could be so disgusting about an obsession? There were already books out like Madame Bovary and Wuthering Heights. It can't be Dolores Hayes, Lolita, is 12 years old. The novel's explicit depiction of Humbert's obsession with a young girl led to widespread debate about its moral and artistic value. Critics and readers grappled with the discomforting blend of beautiful prose and horrific subject matter. Humbert's reverence for Lolita goes far beyond mere infatuation. Humbert coins the term nymphette to describe young girls who possess a certain ineffable allure, and Lolita epitomizes this for him. He writes, "What I had madly possessed was not she, but my own creation, another fanciful Lolita, perhaps more real than Lolita, overlapping, encasing her, floating between me and her, and having no will, no consciousness, indeed, no life of her own." Humbert is fixated on an ideal version of Lolita, transformed and created within his mind. His adoration is not something that was based on who Dolores truly was. It was on a fake image of the god or goddess that he created Lolita to be, this perfect image, a perfect girl. He begins sacrificing to Lolita. He sacrifices his morality, sanity, and ultimately his freedom in his quest to be closer to her. He works meticulously to create plans to control and manipulate Dolores. I knew I had fallen in love with Lolita forever, but I also knew she would not be forever Lolita. Here, Humbert acknowledges the temporal nature of his nymphette, yet he continues to relentlessly pursue her. He sacrifices everything in the process, all to satiate his need to preserve and possess Lolita, much like a worshiper who seeks to remain in the favor of their god. The light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Humbert's deification of Lolita leads to severe and tragic consequences. His obsession strips Lolita of her childhood and autonomy, subjecting her to continuous abuse from his hands. Humbert's inability to see Lolita as a real, autonomous, living, breathing little girl rather than an idealized object of worship results in unimaginable harm. He admits, "I was a pentapod monster, but still I loved in my fashion." This line encapsulates the paradox of Humbert's feelings. His self-awareness of his monstrous behaviors does not deter him from his actions. The misguided worship ultimately destroys both their lives, showcasing the destructive nature of such unhealthy adoration. Lolita, viewed as a deity, is deprived of her humanity and agency, leading to her suffering and Humbert's downfall. We tend to see God as an entity, a person or people we give our praise to, a physical being, not human, but better than ourselves. In Islam, it's Allah. Christianity, it could be Jesus or God the Father. In Hinduism, it could be Vishnu or Brahma. These people are seen as divine and should be put above yourself. Maybe because they created you, or they created the very happiness you feel when you hold your newborn baby for the first time in your arms and you feel all that love and care or something like that. But what we can say is that they have something in common. That thing is that they created and are better than you. So see, today I'm going to take you on a little trip. A trip that sees how serving one thing as your master can take you and spin your life in twisted, deranged, and even sometimes spiritually good ways. I'm gonna show you so that maybe you can come to the conclusion yourself of who or what your God is. The one before Lolita, his God was her. But maybe you can serve money or other people's time or yourself or other gods. Or God himself, God of heaven. Balaam, a prophet, is claiming to have a special ability, the ability to talk to God and deliver messages from him. Because of this, Balaam was summoned by a king, a Moabite king named Balak. During this time, Balak was terrified of the Israelites who were advancing towards his land, looking to take it over. Balak wanted Balaam to curse them. Balaam at first was extremely hesitant. The Israelite empire was a nation of God, but eventually he agreed to go with Balak's messengers. God was not pleased with Balaam's decision to accompany them. So, as Balaam set out on his journey with his donkey, on the way, the donkey would veer off the path. He veered 3 times until they went into the fields. Balaam's foot was crushed against a wall. Each time, Balaam would get more and more frustrated. You see, an angel of the Lord was on the path standing with a drawn sword. Balaam couldn't see the angel, but his donkey could. Finally, after beating the donkey countless times, the Lord allowed the donkey to speak. The donkey asked Balaam why he had beaten her. Balaam, shocked and surprised, didn't seem to find it strange that his donkey was talking. He simply replied that she had made a fool of him. The Lord then opened Balaam's eyes. There was an angel standing right in front of him, waiting to put that sword to use. The angel explained that the donkey saved Balaam's life by moving out of the way, narrowly avoiding the angel's sword. The angel gave warning, though, to Balaam, telling him to speak only what God instructed him to speak when he reached back to Balak. Upon their meeting, instead of cursing the Israelites, Balaam blessed them. 3 times he blessed the Israelites, as it was the words given to him by God. This angered Balak. Balaam was a person that put God first. Do you? There was this lady once. She had a kid, and the kid was ill. Kid had diabetes. Pretty sure it was type 1. And this woman had a deep, deep relationship with God. This relationship was so deep that she had visions with God. These visions of God told her that her son was cured and that he doesn't need to be taking insulin anymore. So the lady stopped the insulin. She stopped giving her son treatment altogether, and her son ended up in the hospital. She stopped giving her son treatment, and her son ended up in the hospital. You see, they said that you need to start taking your medication again, and she adamantly was just like, I had visions. The doctors kept telling her that your son needs to take this medication or else he's going to die. The lady starts to give her son the medication again. She's giving her son the medication again. She finally is listening to what the doctors are saying and giving the medication again. One night again, she goes to her bed. She prays, she gets ready for bed. And in her dream, her son is completely healed of the diabetes. She believes so heavily in her creator, in her God, God of heaven that he was cured. And so she takes him off the insulin once again. No matter what happened, she said that her son was okay. Her son ended up passing away. And that's how the story ends. I really don't know what happened to her after the fact. I think they were trying to try her with murdering her kid or child neglect, but human rights and stuff. Anyway, needless to say, our God or gods blind us in the moral sense. By viewing Lolita as a deity, Humbert absolves himself of all guilt and responsibility. He fully convinces himself that his actions are justified in the context of his undying worship and praise. He goes on to describe his rationalizations. You see, I loved her. It was love at first sight, at last sight, at ever and ever sight. Or, you see, she had absolutely nowhere else to go. His belief in his own version of love blinds him to the reality of his abuse and the harm he inflicts on Dolores. His idolization of Dolores serves as a shield against guilt, allowing him to continue his obsession without confronting the moral and ethical ramifications. Balaam too decided to blind himself. Not putting the curse on the Israelites doomed them to the possibility of their land being captured and tarnished, using God to escape from the ramifications, or maybe it is true belief. What even is true belief? Or should I say, knowledge? Have you or a loved one ever been in a dream, falling just for when you're about to hit the ground, you shoot up in your bed realizing it was all just a dream? What if this concept happened in reality? The version of death is so unknown that every time you die, a reality is split, making the dead version of you go to another reality, and you who is still alive stays where you are. Well, that is what this Reddit user thought, and those thoughts plagued his mind, thinking about it for days, which turned into months. He could not shake the idea from his head. If I'm tortured, will I suffer forever? What about when I'm old? I don't want to be here forever, with all my loved ones in different dimensions. Those delusions for him started to become reality, until one day he posted his very last Reddit post, never to be heard from again.
I'm a god. Everybody says, who does he think he is? I just told you who I thought I was, a god.
Dorian Gray is a young and handsome man who becomes completely entranced within his own beauty and youth. After having his portrait painted by the artist Basil Hallward, Dorian expresses a desire to remain young and beautiful forever, even if that meant sacrificing his own soul. Through a twist of supernatural proportions, Dorian is granted his wish, and the portrait ages and reflects Dorian's narcissism, his need for self-worship, all in all, his moral corruption, while Dorian himself remains outwardly unchanged. Free from any consequence with his actions, Dorian plunges into a world of hedonism and vice, pursuing gratification and pleasure without regard for the well-being of others. As we progress down Dorian's rabbit hole of narcissism and self-absorption, it leads him down a dark path, a path of moral decay and destruction, resulting in tragedy for himself and harm for those around him. When he looks back at the portrait, his once handsome, youthful self is ugly and decrepit. In the end, he resolves to amend his life, but cannot muster the courage to confess his crimes of murder and leading a woman on. And the painting now reveals his supposed desire to repent for what it is: hypocrisy. In a fury, Dorian picks up the knife he used to stab the painter Basil Hallward because he thought that the painter is the one that ruined the picture, and he attempts to destroy his very own painting. And it works. There's a crash, and his servants enter to find the portrait completely unharmed, showing Dorian Gray as a beautiful young man. On the floor lies the body of their master, an old man, horribly wrinkled and disfigured, with a knife plunged straight into his heart. Humbert only loved Lolita for his own sadistic pleasure. Balaam only served God when it was in his best interest. Because when it wasn't, he continued to interact with Balak, advising him on how to undermine the Israelites. Even though he couldn't curse them directly, he taught Balak to entice the Israelites into sexual immorality and idolatry. But finally, he became one of the ones who were killed when the Israelites conquered the Midianites. And don't even let me get started on Dorian. Maybe the only real God you can serve is yourself. It doesn't have to be the God of heaven, or I could argue that it can't be the God of heaven or gods or goddesses. They could only enable what is good within you and what you want to accomplish, or what is bad within you and what evil is lurking within your midst. Besides, you can't do anything that's outside of your will. You don't have to eat, but you don't want to starve. Or you like the taste of food, so you choose to be a munch. All I'm saying is, you don't have to name 5 DDG songs, even if the gun is to the back of your head. It's all your choice. And all we ever choose to do is what we think is the most pleasurable. But that's a different story for a different video. But how can you do things for yourself if you don't even know who you are? How can you do things for yourself if you don't even know who you are? I don't even know either. You got me with that one.